Put on a suit. Drink water. Don't drink and drive.
Game over!
Take it light. Safe.
Now you're more fluent.
Makina, he got three!
Up, Bears.
So this is really good right here. Absolutely. Let's do it.
Good morning, Maple Leaf fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Leafs Lounge. I am your host, Josh Lieberman. Flying solo today. As you can probably tell, Justin is not available to jump on here. Probably will be rejoining next week. So no co-captain today. So if anyone is tuning in, as always, kind of would encourage anyone who wants to maybe jump on, have a comment about anything Maple Leaf related or regular NHL related. We got the Stanley Cup coming up later this week on the weekend. So if you got any thoughts on that or just want to ask a question, I'm happy to bring you on here. So just write me a little note in the comment box there and I can send you a link and we can bring you on live. So welcome to another episode. It is Tuesday, June the 4th. Can't believe we're already in June. Crazy. And we finally have a Stanley Cup matchup. We've got Edmonton and Florida. Unfortunately, we have to wait a long time for it. You know, like the NHL just kills me with how they schedule things. Like even in the regular season, there are so many issues with you'd have teams that are playing 3 games in 4 nights, and then they'd be off for 5 nights, you know, like it was just so unbalanced. And I guess every team had it, so it shouldn't have really impacted any team more than others. But it just felt that like throughout the season, there were always just these weird gaps. And, you know, you'd have like 1 game on a Monday night and then 14 games on Tuesday. It's like, I don't know. Like, I get it. NHL's got a lot of people, sponsors, networks, especially with the U.S. now with ESPN, TNT coverage. You got a lot of people you got to accommodate, but it just seems like it's mostly the NHL that always has to, you know, either be more flexible with their schedule and just go way off in terms of what you would deem to be a normal calendar for your hockey team. So we have it again with the Stanley Cup final. I don't know if you guys have seen the schedule yet, but we obviously have to wait until this coming Saturday for game 1, even though the Eastern Conference or Western Conference final, wrapped up Saturday. So we're basically waiting a week for it, which is crazy. So then you start on Saturday, but I believe game 7, if it goes to a game 7, wouldn't be until like June 24th. It's June 4th right now. Like, how does that make sense? I believe there are 4 2-day breaks in between games in this series, assuming, of course, it goes 7 games. So every time they're changing locations from Florida to Edmonton and back to Florida, there's a 2-day break in between those games. So Saturday you got a game, Monday you got a game, good with that, but then you wait until Thursday to get game 3. Then you go Saturday. So I get it. NHL wants those Saturday games, and I understand why they don't want to drop the puck on Thursday for game 1, NBA final game 1. So I get it. You don't want to compete with the NBA and you want your Saturday games, but yeah, it just seems like unnecessary. These, just extended series. I mean, right now you kind of lose interest. Obviously your dedicated, passionate hockey fans aren't going anywhere. They're going to be glued to the TV, even if you said we're not going to start until June 15th, right? But you get some fans who are maybe like drawn to the Stanley Cup final based on having recently watched Florida eliminate the Rangers, and they're like, hey, let's go, let's get this puck drop. But no, you got to wait until Saturday. So a little bit disappointing to have to wait and have that delay, but once we do get going, I expect it to be a pretty good final. For myself, looking at the Western Conference final, like a lot of people, I think I had Dallas over Edmonton. I think a lot of people haven't given Edmonton nearly enough credit, and maybe in part it was because of their, easier path in terms of getting to the conference finals. LA Kings, Vancouver Canucks, not the same kind of path as, Dallas, who they played, had to go through Vegas and Colorado. And then even if you look at the other conferences or the other conference, Florida had to go through Tampa, Boston, and now they went through the Rangers. So Edmonton, you could argue, had an easier path. And I think that kind of made some people blind to the type of club that they are right now. These are not the Edmonton Oilers from the last couple years, even 2 years ago when they also went to the conference finals and, basically got dummied by Colorado. This is a team that, is not just relying on the power play. Obviously, they've got the most dominant and productive power play in the NHL, but they've proven they can play a defensive game. They can score at 5-on-5. Like in the Western Conference Final, only 4 of their 7 goals came on the power play. 4 of their 17 goals. 4 of their 7 would have been quite impressive if they found a way to advance with only 7 goals. 4 of their 17 goals in the Western Conference Final came on the power play, which is not a lot. So they've proven they can do it 5-on-5. And they also have the best penalty kill in the playoffs amongst all teams. So pretty impressive how they've done it, because essentially with, the hiring of Knobloch, their coach, they really revamped how Edmonton Oilers win hockey games. It's not we need to win 5-4 to have a chance to, get the W or advance in a playoff series. They've won games 1-0. Skinner had a shutout, I think, one of the games in the first round against the Kings. And then, 2-1 to eliminate Dallas. So they're winning in different ways. They're, utilizing everyone in their lineup, which as a Leaf fan is kind of where I think most fans would like to see the team go, where you don't have to just put all your aspirations and hopes on 4 forwards to get the job done. You might actually have a bottom 6 group that can be effective. And yeah, I don't think anyone's getting or expecting much offense to come from the likes of Connor Brown, Sam Carrick, Corey Perry right now. But these guys are playing pretty heavy minutes, and they've been effective. And especially the penalty kill, whether it's Brown, Janmark, they've looked good. They've looked good. And, Evan Bouchard, Matthias Ekholm have been complete studs on the blue line. Skinner, no one would have thought he was going to play Jake Ottinger in the conference final, but here we are. He did. So, I think, as I said, everyone kind of had Dallas beating Edmonton, I think, and are probably still surprised and probably still doubting Edmonton going into the Cup final. Just in terms of, I guess, where the books are right now, Florida is a -130 money line favorite to take the Cup, to win the final against Edmonton, which, I don't think that's a surprise. Home ice advantage, basically what Florida has been doing in the playoffs so far. They've been the most impressive team in the NHL playoffs for me anyways, start to finish. So them being the favorite, not really a shock there. But I would have thought they would have been heavier favorites, like more like a maybe 145, -150, especially having home ice and all that. But that tells me the books are not like completely writing off Edmonton. So I think we're going to be in for a good series. My prediction right now is Florida to take it. I would think in 6 games, but again, I also had Dallas beating Edmonton. So who knows how that's going to play out, but I think we're in for a good matchup. Everyone's obviously going to be looking forward to seeing how Barkov does against McDavid. Will Draisaitl also be playing with McDavid, or are they going to keep them on separate lines? And yeah, how will Barkov either? I don't think he's going to shut down McDavid. I don't think that's a possibility for any defensive forward, even Barkov. But if he can neutralize McDavid, and if Florida can try to stay out of the penalty box, because that will be a big thing. The Florida Panthers were the most penalized team in the NHL this season. Now, they've been a little bit more disciplined in the playoffs. They're kind of middle of the pack in terms of penalties taken. But yeah, most penalized team in the regular season. If it's a parade to the penalty box for the Florida Panthers, they could get down quickly in this series. So they're going to have to obviously avoid putting Edmonton on the power play. Now, they do have the second best penalty kill unit in the NHL playoffs, so they have that going for them. Edmonton, of course, ranks first in both power play and penalty kill. So, I mean, just going back to what I was saying earlier, like this is not the same Edmonton team. It's a very well-coached team. It's a disciplined team. It's a team that's found the way to be incredibly effective killing penalties. Their penalty kill unit's been outstanding. And, you know, as I said, 4 of their 17 goals only have come on the power play. Not what you would expect from the Edmonton Oilers. It's not the fire wagon hockey that we've seen from them, not only in past playoffs, but pretty much in every regular season too, right? So a little bit surprising how they've done it, and obviously impressive. One more note on the Stanley Cup final. So if you are looking to place a wager, in terms of MVP Conn Smythe, your favorites right now are as follows: McDavid, Barkov, Bobrovsky, Matthew Tkachuk, Draisaitl, Evan Bouchard. All those guys starting from McDavid, ranging from 2-1 to 10-1 odds. Now, what I was looking at last night that I found kind of interesting. If you think the Oilers are going to win the series, and obviously the favorite would be McDavid to win the Conn Smythe, but it might be worth a flyer to take Stuart Skinner. He is 240-1. Like, you've got Evan Bouchard at 10-1, basically, and Stuart Skinner, the goalie, 240-1. Like, are the books saying that they expect Stuart Skinner to be in the press box by game 2? Like, is that what they're basically suggesting here? Because 240-1 is pretty crazy for the starting goalie, especially in a series where, you know, Oilers are only plus 110 underdogs. It wouldn't be crazy to see Edmonton find a way to win the series. And I would argue if they do, Stuart Skinner is going to have to be a big part of that, right? I mean, usually when you win a Stanley Cup, your goalie helps you quite a bit. So I don't know. I think that's kind of a miss on the books part. I'm definitely going to be putting a little bit of a sprinkle on that one. Skinner to win the Conn Smythe. I already have a bet on Florida to win the Cup, so don't want to kind of, erase too many of my bets. But I think the Conn Smythe one for Skinner is a pretty solid one. All right. So that's where we are. Stanley Cup final. Game 1 will be Saturday. We'll be able to talk about Game 1 and Game 2 when we're back on next Tuesday. So hopefully we have a couple of good games and some exciting hockey. So let's get back into some Maple Leaf topics. Mitch Marner, I think, is where we have to begin. I don't think it would be fair to not touch upon some of the news with Mitch Marner. Obviously nothing kind of crazy in terms of developments or, confirmed reports, but what has come out, there was a couple reports actually. Pierre LeBrun suggested that from Marner's camp, their side has basically said they're not looking at having any discussions around extension or providing the Maple Leafs with a trade list. So they're not looking to have any of those discussions, basically not looking to move the process forward with Mitch Marner and essentially playing out the year. That obviously comes from Mitch Marner's camp, which I think if you understand how typical negotiations go in pro sports, probably not a surprise that that's kind of the position they're taking, right? They obviously want to present their client, talking about Mitch Marner's agency, they want to present their camp as, the peacemaker. My client, all he wants to do is play hockey, have fun, help the team win. So we're just going to let him do that, and we'll see where the chips fall, He's not going to be focused on the extension. That doesn't matter to him right now. All he wants to do is help the Maple Leafs win the cup, right? That is going to be what their angle is, and that's clearly what Pierre LeBrun has picked up on and reported, right? Like the camp is saying, yeah, we're just going to take it as it comes, and we're ready to play hockey. No need to discuss extension now. We're not worried about it. So, depending on where you feel that is in terms of the validity of it, how truthful is that? Is Mitch Marner willing to play out the year and essentially bet on himself, knowing that the Maple Leafs might not have a contract waiting for him? Because this obviously presents a situation where Mitch Marner essentially gets walked out the door, right? Like if the Maple Leafs have said, okay, we know what your number is, we aren't there, so you can get 150 points next year, we're not paying you that money. So I don't believe they would have indicated that to Marner's camp yet, but it just kind of makes you wonder exactly what the Leafs position would be, knowing that they have come out and publicly stated that they expect to make changes. Now, they never said Mitch Marner is going to be that change. So perhaps they can say, oh, yeah, the change we were talking about was, trading Yarncroke or something. That was really all we meant by that. But, you could obviously make the connection when they were talking about, the core and what they think they've, done wrong in the past. And now they're realizing that maybe some of what they thought could happen with this team isn't possible. So obviously enough people, reporters, fans have made the connection that between Shanahan, Treliving, Berube now, there will be a significant change. So I don't think the team would feel comfortable dropping the puck on opening night, whenever that day is in October, with the exact same team, essentially, right? And we'll talk a little bit about what could happen with Domi, Bertuzzi, whoever, all their free agents. But if Mitch Marner is back, and we know Matthews Nylander will be back, we suspect Tavares will be back because he's not waiving his no movement. Maybe they could look at a Morgan Riley trade, but haven't heard that that's really something they're considering. So if you're going to bring all that back, then what the hell are you talking about in your press conference, So it's a little bit confusing, little bit, I would say, exciting to see where this ends up, because I think there's obviously, the expectation based on what's been reported. And again, that's just coming from Mitch Marner's camp that, yeah, we're just going to, go into the season. We're not worried if we don't have that extension, but we're also not talking trade. Mitch Marner wants to be a Maple Leaf, all that, and we'll see what the Leafs position is. Yes, Marner has all the leverage there. If he says, yeah, sorry, guys, I ain't waiving, you could either pay me what I'm looking for, or I'm getting the hell out of here as a free agent and you don't get anything for me. So Mitch Marner definitely has all the leverage. But what could the Leaf organization do? Could they take back some of his ice time? Would they go to an extreme of either benching him, taking away his power play one time, not playing him with Matthews, and hopefully tanking his production? But that wouldn't be in their best interest, right? Like, to me, I see it kind of playing out like the Nylander situation, where no deal was done. Season begins and Nylander comes out of the gates on fire, basically like top 3 in NHL scoring through 30 games or whatever it was. And he basically, called the Leafs bluff in terms of, will you trade me, or will you look to re-sign me? And he bet on himself and obviously did incredibly well, right? I mean, I think most fans are like, yeah, we love Nylander as a player, but yeah, 11.5 for Nylander is too much, too much. But I think the Leafs' hands were tied because when they had the opportunity to trade him, they either were asking for too much or Nylander wouldn't go to those teams because Kyle Dubas really handcuffed the organization, Tree Living, with all these no movement clauses. And I get it. Seems like almost any player right now, no matter what team, is getting some form of no movement, no trade, 10-team no trade. So I know it's out there, but it just seems like with these previous RFAs that Dubas signed, the core guys, they got everything they could have asked for. They got the term they wanted, whether they wanted full term or they got the max AAV. In the case of Matthews and Marner, I would argue they got both. They got the term they wanted, not full 8 years, and they got the max AAV. Like they both should have probably gotten that money even if they gave the team 8 years, but they got it on a shorter term deal and with the no movement and everything. And it just, I think there's enough Leaf fans who are at the point where they're like, I can't get excited about running it back again. It's been 8 years now of this team making the playoffs. And sure, we could even say the first 3, maybe 4. Okay, it's a young group. They need to learn. They're figure it out. They're too talented not to get it done. Sure. But then you lose to the Canadians after being up 3-1. And for the most part, aside from Nylander, all those guys were no-shows. Tavares obviously got hurt in game 1, so he gets a hall pass there. But all the other guys really didn't show up. And it was just a embarrassment. And at that point, I would have thought, that could be a good time to break up the core because you obviously saw the disappointment the previous year against the Columbus Blue Jackets, a team you probably should have beaten. So then, okay, you brought everyone back. Keefe, obviously, first full year, but then you lose to the Canadians. I'm like, okay, you're not going to fire the coach and you're not going to consider breaking up the core. Okay, you're going to run it back again. And then came back with Tampa, lost that one. Then got a little bit further, got in the second round, but got crushed by Florida. Again, the core not performing. And then yet you still decided to run it back again. Now, last summer, I think a lot of people would argue that was the time to pivot before the Mitch Marner no movement clause kicked in, before the Nylander clause kicked in. Like for me, I would have preferred them to do it then. I think I was already at the point where, look, these guys are great players, great hockey players, but we know where this is going. We know they're not going to get it done. This team with this core, getting the money they are and not being able to allocate money elsewhere, like the blue line, like in net, they're not going to get it done. Could they win a round? Sure. But a deep playoff run with this group, it wasn't going to happen. So it felt like last summer could have been the time to do it. But who knows when, Tree Living took over and he basically just got hired, in June or whatever, mid-June or something. So maybe he didn't have enough time to assess it. Maybe Shanahan told him, yeah, we think this group deserves one more kick at the can. Maybe add some things that you think can help them, give them some support, get some physicality in there and see what happens. But yeah, that feels like a missed opportunity now because now all the leverage is was with Nylander and now is with Mitch Marner. So feels like a tough position. Not feels like, it is a tough position for Tree Living and Shanahan right now. Because, you can pressure Mitch Marner. You can, through your media, you can plant stories and make it seem like Mitch Marner is the guy who's, he's playing hardball and he isn't entertaining any of the offers that we presented that we think are fair value. So it could get ugly here, guys. Like it could be both sides saying, we want to get our way. And unless we do, we're going to make it a lot more difficult for you to get your way. And for Mitch Marner's camp, he's probably thinking like, I'm good no matter what. If the Leafs like me enough to re-sign me, if I go out and have an amazing career year, over 100 points, they're probably going to give me a contract and pay me what I'm asking for. But even if they don't, some other team in free agency will. So Mitch Marner's probably like, yeah, this can't work out bad for me. Just go play hockey, the game I love. Apparently he does. And see where it goes. Whereas the Maple Leafs are probably finding it a little bit more difficult in terms of how they're going to play it, right? Like, they obviously want to be a playoff team. That's what they expect to be. So putting Mitch Marner in the press box certainly doesn't help you become a playoff team, right? So if you are having him in your lineup, if he's not getting traded, and he's not going to hold out, he's obviously going to play. He wants to get his paycheck. So he's going to be playing. So you're obviously going to utilize him. It doesn't make sense to me to play him on the fourth line and, promote Ryan Reeves or Calle Yarncroke to the first line. That's not going to help you win. Or playing Yarncroke on your power play. We've seen the results of that. So Mitch Marner's going to play, and he's going to be productive, as he always is. So I think he stands to benefit a lot more if the Leafs can't figure out a way to convince him to move his no trade. So on that note, because you probably heard enough of me talking, want to play you a clip from Elliot Friedman. He had kind of a good take on the whole Mitch Marner situation and what he's hearing. It just kind of gives a good summary of where things could be. So let me roll it for you here.
Things that a few people have told me is not to be surprised if this plays out over next season with Marner in Toronto. The Leafs are determined to either make a good trade or, with the cap room that's created by that trade, do something big that they know they can't afford to have a swing and a miss with this one. And also the player is determined, and more importantly, the people around the player are determined to do this, that make themselves look good. I think that there is some real concern about how the Toronto fans will react to Marner if he starts next year unsigned. And you can't avoid that. And, some people, and me, I'm the kind of person who's like, look, if you want to bet on yourself, bet on yourself. I've bet on myself before. Other people have bet on themselves before. If that's what Marner wants to do, I think he has all the right in the world to do it. But he has to understand that some of the fan base is not going to react very well to that. And I think with the Maple Leafs, the other issue that they are dealing with here, and I think there are people in the organization who feel very strongly about this, is that they traded Nazem Kadri a couple years ago when they were mad at him. And look, Kadri got suspended twice in a row. There are people who felt very strongly at the time that they had to make that trade. But Nazem Kadri went somewhere else, sorted himself out, and I think there are people in the organization who are looking at this and believe, could this be Kadri too? I have to tell you, I don't think there's a certain, I know there's people who are like 100% he's getting traded. On Sunday, June the 2nd, I don't know that I'm so certain of that. And I think one of the biggest challenges here are going to be the sort of like the feelings of everybody involved. I just think that this is going to take a lot of diplomacy for a lot of people to do properly.
All right. So that was kind of a, I don't say shots fired, but just very, just very kind of dramatic stuff. And a little bit makes you anxious as a Leaf fan to where the thing could go. The one thing that I didn't kind of get, and I guess I sort of understand where it's coming from. I'd just be shocked if anyone in the organization actually feels this way, talking about that some within the Maple Leafs organization are looking at this Marner situation as potentially Kadri 2.0. Like, I don't think maybe there's some casual hockey fans, casual Leaf fans who feel that could be a worry. And look, obviously there's no doubt. If you trade Mitch Marner, you're not exactly expecting that he's not going to be an effective player wherever he goes. You know what you're trading. You know what you're giving up with Mitch Marner. You're giving up a guy who, even though he hasn't got 100 points yet, he's been darn close. He had 99 2 years ago. So you know what you're giving up. It's not like it's going to be like, oh man, Mitch Marner is now a 90, 95 point player. Who knew? I think with Kadri, it was a very different set of circumstances, which kind of Elliot Friedman alluded to, right? Got suspended twice, pretty much the entire fan base. I mean, obviously there were some that still thought like, oh, give him one more chance. But I know for myself and a lot of Leaf fans, it was like, oh my God, Kadri, you can't keep doing this to the team, you know, like getting suspended in a playoff game, like calm down. So we were open to a trade. I don't think any Leaf fan was hoping we would get Tyson Barrie and Alex Kerfoot for Kadri. So that's not something that I think Leaf fans were signing up for, but it felt like maybe it could be time to move on. You obviously had just signed JT. So the idea of paying Kadri, even though he was on a great deal, good value contract at, I think it was like 4.5 mil. Thank you, Lou Lamoriello. You weren't exactly thinking like, oh, you need to keep him and pay your third line center 4.5 mil. Like, yeah, I mean, he's played wing. There could have been other ways to figure that out and make it work. But I don't recall too many Leaf fans saying, oh my God, how can you trade Kadri? Why? Whereas the Mitch Marner, I think there's a lot more. I think there's that understanding that trading Mitch Marner is not a trade you make because you don't want anything to do with the player. It's more, you don't want anything to do with his asking price, his contract. Obviously, the playoff failures and disappointing play for Marner is something that Leaf fans could definitely live without. But you're not trading Mitch Marner with the expectation that he has no value. And, you know, if he said, hey, you know what, I'd come back here for 5 mil. I'd come back here for 8 mil even. I think every Leaf fan would gladly take Mitch Marner back. So it's not similar to Kadri in that I don't care that Kadri's only making 4.5. I want him out of here. He's the reason we lost 2 years in a row in the playoffs because of suspensions. Gone. Mitch Marner, I don't think that's the feeling. Obviously, there's a lot of fans who are just like, yeah, trade Mitch Marner for cap room, and I don't even care. I don't even care if we don't get anything back. But I think the more level-headed fans, if you will, are more just like, we need to trade Mitch Marner because we need to change the look of this team, the look and feel of the team. We need to get, you know, more competitive players, not just at forward, but also blue line. We need to upgrade our defense. We need better defensemen than Morgan Rielly, TJ Brody. That can't be our number one pair. We're not going to win a cup with that kind of group. So I think it's more about the timing, the fact that Nylander and Matthews have already re-signed. So Marner and JT are next men up for their contract. Most people recognize that Tavares cannot be moved or will not even consider being moved. He's not going to waive his no movement. So you really, if you're trying to recoup cap space, Mitch Marner, and then maybe Morgan Rielly, depending on what his appetite is to go elsewhere. Those are the only two guys that really present an opportunity to pivot, to change what hasn't worked in 8 years, right? Like, guys, it's not like we're talking about like an overreaction to, really, you're going to trade Mitch Marner? Like, why? Like, every fan should know why. Every Leaf fan should know why. Like, any non-Leaf fan is not saying like, you guys are crazy to think you can trade Mitch Marner or you should trade Mitch Marner. Everyone's like, yeah, guy's soft. He doesn't perform. He doesn't deliver in the postseason. Why would you want him back? But there obviously is a large pocket of Leaf fans who get so damn attached to every player that wears a Leaf jersey. And especially the ones that actually produce, right? There's been so many awful years of, you know, talentless lineups that this Leaf fan base has had to endure that no one wants to see Matthews, Nylander, Marner, Tavares, maybe to a lesser extent, Riley. No one wants to see these guys leave. And it's kind of a disease, I think, that Leaf fans get so attached to the name on the back of the jersey and they lose focus on what does the team need to do to win. And it's just about looking at the current players, what they've done, more importantly, what they haven't done, and saying, hey, if we run this back, do we really think we can beat Florida? Do we really think we can beat the Rangers, Carolina? Like, there's no way with this group right here. Like, why would you want to see that again? I don't get that part. So for me, it's more about timing. Obviously, there's a huge element of the type of player Mitch Marner is that I feel from when he got his contract, like that season heading into his extension where he had the 94-point season, that was like peak Mitch Marner. And not that he's like really come down from that, but he's kind of just remained flat. He is who he is. He's a dynamic playmaker, probably top 5 playmakers in the NHL. Could maybe even make an argument for top 3. But as an overall player, you cannot have Mitch Marner in your top 5. Definitely not. You can't have him in your top 10. Probably can't have him in your top 15. He's probably around that 20 to 25. And if you're combining goalies and defensemen, yeah, I think top 25 is probably where he is. And not to say that's not good, but that ain't worth $12 million. And that's what he's going to be asking for. That is not even worth $11 million. And then people will say, oh, but we're okay paying Nylander 11.5. And to that, like, I'm not. The Leaf organization was. I guess they valued the goal scorer over the playmaker, or they figured Nylander at 11.5, better value than Marner at 12.5. I would have liked to see them take a more aggressive position with Nylander. So that whole like, well, why are you blaming Marner? Also Matthews and Nylander, Tavares, they haven't really done anything in the playoffs. So why do they get off the hook? So it's not really a matter of Mitch Marner is the guy that we need to point a finger at, that you, Mitch Marner, you are the reason. That's not where I'm at. I mean, some Leaf fans probably are. But for me, it's more, again, the timing of the contract. We've got an expiring asset that you really can't let walk out the door. You decided to overpay Nylander. That one's done. But you can't do it. 2 wrongs don't make a right. So just feeling like you're trapped in a corner with Mitch Marner having all the leverage, you can't do what you did with Nylander to say, fine, we will pay exactly what you want. Here's 12.5 times 8. Or, oh, wait, you don't even want to be here for 8 years? Okay, no problem. 12.5 times 5. Like, the Leafs can't keep doing this. They can't keep overpaying for players that don't perform relative to that value expectation. Like, I think there's probably some Leaf fans, and this would be the more delusional ones, that look at Edmonton getting to the final and being like, there we go. I told you, you can win with a team built around mostly talented forwards. You don't need all this grit and physicality that all the boomers tell me we need. Look, Edmonton's doing it. And yeah, there are definitely parallels to that, no doubt, in terms of how they've allocated cap space in the past, how they've been built, not having that elite goaltender, not having great depth on the blue line. But when you actually dissect it, these things aren't the same. The Toronto Maple Leafs and the Edmonton Oilers are not the same, okay? McDavid and Draisaitl, definitely way better, and obviously playoff performance way better than anything Matthews and Marner has done. So I think 2-3 years ago, it was a fair discussion to say, okay, well, tell me why McDavid and Draisaitl are so much better than our guys. I don't think that discussion can be had anymore. There's no more argument. Case is closed. McDavid and Draisaitl dominate in the playoffs. And they have pretty much every year. Like the numbers they're putting up are historic. Like they're going to be where Gretzky and Mark Messier were when they played with Edmonton. So these are dominant playoff performers and obviously better than Matthews and Marner. And then you go a little bit deeper when you look at Zach Hyman, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Evander Kane. I'm taking that group over Nylander, Tavares, especially at his where he is right now in his career. And I don't know if you're bringing Bertuzzi or Domi back or put Matthew Nyes in there. Like I'm taking those guys, those kind of like other top 6 guys over ours right now. Some of it based on how they performed in the playoffs. But I mean, to me, I think Hyman helps you win more games than Nylander does right now. Obviously, Nylander is probably going to be, in terms of point totals, the more effective or the more productive player, but not by much. I mean, if Hyman scores 50 goals every year, you could basically say production is close enough. Obviously, he only gets like 5 assists every year, Hyman, but 50 goals is 50 goals. And then you look at the blue line where you've got Evan Bouchard and Matthias Ekholm. Like, you want to put Riley and Jake McCabe or Riley and Simone Benoit up against those two? There's no chance. There's no chance. Obviously, when you get deeper into the lineup, yeah, Edmonton having like Kulak and CC and Philip Broberg now looks pretty good. He's come in, but still not a lot of depth on the Oilers blue line, but they're at least kind of playing decent hockey. Obviously, that Darnell Nurse contract is awful, but he's not like, I don't know, who would we kind of like compare him to? I mean, based on the minutes he's getting, you could argue like from last year, a TJ Brody, Gio Labushkin, like Nurse, I would take over most of those guys, even though he definitely has his flaws. So, long story short, the Oilers and the Maple Leafs are not the same. It is not a vindication for those Leaf fans who say, yeah, run that shit back one more time. Because look at Edmonton. Look at Edmonton. It's not the same. So that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, I think with the whole Mitch Marner thing, I'm not trying to read too much into anything like this Elliot Friedman report. Like, are there folks in the Leaf organization that are going to Tree Living and Shanahan and say, no, don't trade Mitch Marner. Remember what happened with Kadri. Like, who exactly would that be? Like, obviously Shanahan was there, but I mean, and Brandon Pridham, I think, would have been there. But what is Brandon Pridham like really going to Shanahan and saying, remember what happened with Kadri? He won a cup after we traded him, so we can't do it with Marner. Like, so stuff like that, I kind of like toss aside. That is kind of meaningless. I don't think there's anyone in the organization that's truly feeling we can't move Marner because of Kadri, of what happened there. But I mean, it does make sense. Like the report from Pierre LeBrun, and Chris Johnson has actually echoed it too, where from Marner's camp, they're not looking to do anything in the summer. Like, we know our position with our extension, what our ass is. So they're probably like, yeah, we're good to go. Tell us when training camp opens. My client will be there, and he's going to have an unbelievable year. And you're going to regret not signing him because he's going to walk out the door and get paid. So we don't owe you anything. We don't owe you a 5-team, 10-team trade list. Like, we don't owe you anything. And obviously, even though it would be very upsetting and frustrating for Leaf fans if Marner walks out the door for nothing, you can't really blame the player, although it will get bad here. Fans will blame Marner. We know what happened with Coberley and Sundin when they weren't willing to waive to get traded. Like, it could get pretty ugly. Is Mitch Marner okay with that? Like, he doesn't seem like, in terms of how he handles media, he doesn't seem like the most confident with that. He doesn't seem very comfortable. If every other question after every game is, yeah, what's going on at your extension? Do you still want to be a Maple Leaf? Are you open to getting traded? If he's getting asked that every day, Like at some point, will he just break and tell his camp, look, tell them LA or Vegas or Colorado or Florida and see if they can get something done. If they want to trade me that badly, I'm willing to go now. So I don't know. Maybe we'll get to that point. So moving on, obviously, there'll be a lot more to talk about related to Mitch Marner as reports, whether they're accurate or not. But there will be reports from all the usual insiders, Elliot Friedman, Pierre LeBrun, Darren Dreger. So hopefully eventually there'll be a leak. There'll be some kind of rumor that we can talk on the show here. So the only other thing I was going to touch upon is some free agent news, mostly related to Toronto Maple Leaf players, unrestricted free agents. So Domi, Bertuzzi, all the news right now is basically just still saying there is a mutual interest, team and the camp of those players. There's a lot of talk about that Bertuzzi and the Maple Leafs have kind of like open contract discussions. There's nothing obviously close to getting done. But yeah, it just sounds like both Domi and Bertuzzi are open to returning, which is good. But I also am a little bit timid in terms of the numbers that have been reported. If you're talking term for Domi or Bertuzzi that goes beyond 4 years, I'd be a little bit wary of that. And then at an AAV for Domi, if it's anything over 4, that's a pass for me. For Bertuzzi, probably anything over 4.75 or 5. Which probably means you don't get Bertuzzi. Even though he had basically his least productive year since his rookie year, just who he is, who he has shown he could be, mostly in the playoff series last year with the Bruins, he's going to get a good contract. Like, her get paid. But, I mean, last year, he took a 1-year, $5.5 million contract with Toronto. So was that merely a matter of him wanting to be a Maple Leaf above everything? Or did he truly misread the market for him? And I can't imagine coming off a 43-point season in Toronto and an early playoff exit where he didn't really do much. I can't imagine his value in terms of an AAV has gone above 5.5, right? So that's why I think kind of 4.5 to 5.5 is the range. You're obviously going to get teams that have cap room and will probably throw a lot more money at Bertuzzi. Maybe. I don't know for sure, obviously, but I suspect there will be a team that is, finds the idea of adding Bertuzzi incredibly appealing and is okay with anything he's demanding, term and AAV. But I don't know if the Leafs are going to have to compete against offers of like 6 years at 6 or 7 mil. I can't imagine the bidding gets up to that number. So hopefully they can get something done with both players in or around 4 to 5 mil. And then, if they can keep the AA or the term below 5, that would be great. There was talk on Joel Edmondson likely exploring UFA, free agency on July 1, that there is kind of an interest in maybe coming back, but he probably just wants to see what's out there. I'm okay with that. I like Joel Edmondson. I don't know if I like Joel Edmondson if he needs to get a 3 or 4 year contract. Like, he's not obviously that old. He's 30, but he's had a lot of injuries. I don't know if I'd feel comfortable, especially the player he is. I mean, when he got acquired, I think he got injured like 3 times in the final 2 weeks of the regular season or final month. So that doesn't really inspire me in terms of investing, 3+ years in Edmondson. But I do suspect someone looking for a defenseman, looking for a physical defenseman who can help your PK would probably be okay giving him a 4th year, a 5th year. I don't know who that dumb team would be, but some team will always do something like that where it's like, really, why did they do that? Why would they have paid that player that much? There only needs to be one GM, right? Only one GM needs to be desperate enough to give like a Joel Edmondson a 5-year contract. So, yeah, I'm not really optimistic Edmondson comes back, but maybe the Leafs do circle back with him if they miss out on some of their targets. Which, for me, before I talk about that, Ilya Lyubushkin, it looks like there's not really an interest to bringing him back. Some of the reports say, yeah, it's almost like he as good as gone. He'll be going to explore free agency, which I'm fine with. Never really liked that acquisition when they made it. And he was okay in the playoffs, just not a needle mover. I don't want to see a guy like Lyubushkin back on term. I think any guy you can find on a PTO, the type of player you would get on a PTO, would be just as good for me. So no to Lyubushkin for me. And then, yeah, I think it's just going to be exciting to see which free agent defensemen the Maple Leafs are looking at talking to, right? I mean, you've got Carolina has 3 UFA defensemen right now, Brady Shea, Jalen Chatfield, and of course, Brett Pesce. Brett Pesce has been a guy that has been talked about as a possible target in Toronto, for Toronto. Is that something they would explore? But Carolina is probably going to be one of the most exciting teams to follow, because not only do they have those guys, they've got Jay Gensel is a UFA. I think Jay Gensel is going elsewhere. But, I mean, there's a lot of guys that Carolina needs to get back into their lineup or replaced or have a equal quality or equally productive player come in to replace them. But they can't let all those 3 defensemen go. So do they pay up for Brady Shea? To me, I think Jalen Chatfield would be a great target. If Carolina says, yeah, we need our D back, we need our core guys, Pesce and Brady Shea, we're going to pay them. And then Jalen Chatfield, we probably can't compete. If he's going to be our third pairing D-man, can't be paying him $3 million or whatever he's going to get on the open market. So Jalen Chatfield, right shot guy, skates well, has a good shot. He'd be a guy I'd love the Maple Leafs to target. So we will see who they're going after. Obviously, there's a lot of other talk around, Nikita Zadorov, Chris Tanev, Matt Dumba, players that the Leafs have shown an interest in the past. So could that be a fit as well? I think there's, it's a pretty deep class of UFA defensemen. So Treliving, if he has the money to work with, I think he can make a big splash and really upgrade the blue line. It would obviously help if Mitch Marner isn't a part of his team and you recoup some cap room there, because right now, $18.5 million is going to go very quickly if you look at bringing back like Domi, Bertuzzi, maybe Dewar. If you have any intention to bring back even 2 of those guys, you're really not working with a lot of cash once you start shopping for a defenseman, and they need a backup goalie too. So that's going to be tough. But anyways, it'll be great to see how it plays out. I appreciate everyone for jumping on here. And if you're going to catch the episode a little bit later, feel free to comment on anything that you liked or didn't like about the episode, and maybe anything you would like to see us include going forward. So that will be all we have for today. Enjoy the Stanley Cup final, guys, and NBA finals start on Thursday. So should be an exciting week. We just got to get through these next couple of days here, and should be a fun weekend for sure. So enjoy all the action, guys, and we will talk soon.
Take it light. Safe.
Now you're more fluent. He got 3!
So this is really good right here. Absolutely. Let's do it.